By way of introduction, I looked it up this morning, there are 7.056 billion people in the world today. People live in countries, and 204 countries send their best athletes to the Olympics. 164 countries send their best athletes to the Paralympics. Making your country's Olympic team is one of the most daunting challenges for any athlete anywhere in the world. In fact, you wrote in your book that there are 1,001 ways not to make your country's Olympic team. When you get to the Olympics, on the world's biggest stage, there is only one gold medal in every event. And Mallory Weggemann and Bryan Clay each won a gold medal that I have the privilege of wearing. They are 2 out of 7.056 billion people in the world. And you know, even though they haven't said a word yet, I would like to stand and give them a round of applause for their... It is one of the most extraordinary accomplishments in the world. Okay, I have a few questions for them, but we have a short video that we'd like you to see before you hear from them. So if we could roll that right now. And if not, I'll... Nobody, okay. Mallory. Your father always said to you, you're the best, you can make a difference, you can change the world. Very smart father. How have those words impacted your life?
You know, for me, am I on? Oh, we're on, okay. Little backstory first. I was paralyzed in January of 2008, so my 5-year anniversary is getting ready to come up. I walked in to receive an epidural injection for back pain on January 21st, and it was my third and final one, and I never walked out. My life forever changed that day. And I grew up my entire life. My dad would tuck my 2 older sisters and I into bed every night, and he'd tell us, you're the best, you can make a difference, and you can change the world. And as a kid, I had no idea what that meant. You know, my sisters and I'd laugh because he's our dad. Of course, we're the best in his eyes. You know, he's a little biased in that department. But we didn't really know what to make of the rest of it because we were just kids. And as we each grew up, we kind of figured out what that meant for our life. And for me, it was when I was paralyzed. I was 18, 2 months before my 19th birthday when this happened. And as I grieved this and started figuring out what it meant for my life moving forward, those words started to mean something to me. And in that process, I realized that everything happens for a reason. And that reason is that, you know, now, you know, I might be paralyzed, but I can leave a much larger impact on the world than I could before. And each and every one of us has the ability to leave an impact and be the best and make a difference. And I found what my impact would be when I was paralyzed. And I think we all kind of have those moments in our life when we find that. And for me, that was in January of 2008.
Bryan, after reaching the mountaintop and becoming the greatest athlete in the world in 2008, what was the pressure like to try to repeat 4 years later? Was it easier because you knew what it took to get there, or harder because you now had a target on your back that everybody else was gunning for you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys, and Mallory. We're pretty much a family. You know, we live right around the corner from each other, and we get to do some of these fun events together, and it's a real pleasure to be able to do this with her. So thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. In terms of the Olympics and winning a gold medal, gosh, I cannot tell you how many things have to go right. So to answer your question, yes and no. It was a little bit easier the second time around because you kind of know what to expect for the most part, but then it was harder because you can't plan or prepare for everything. And when you think about winning a gold medal, Marc was talking about this earlier, and I try to explain this to people. You're not trying to be the best in, Palo Alto, or the best in California, or the best in the United States. You're trying to be the best in the world. There's only one person in my event that gets to get the gold medal and call themselves the world's greatest athlete. So no matter how much I prepare, no matter how much I knew what to expect, there are so many things that have to go right on a daily basis just to get through practice and not get injured. And then multiply that by 6 days a week for about 7 hours a day, and then multiply that by 4 years, and know that you have to perform on the day that they tell you to. And you can't, think about things that you have no control over. Migraines, which I suffer from. Asthma, which I suffer from. The weather, whether it's rainy or sunny, or if it's humid or too cold. The wind, the way the wind's blowing and how hard it's blowing. All of those things you have no control over, and you have to show up with whatever the conditions are, with however you're feeling, and have the best meet of your life on those 2 days when they tell you to, or you walk away with nothing. So, yeah, it was a little easier, but not really.
These are heavy.
Mallory's is a little heavier than mine, but...
They get bigger each go.
Mallory, with what you've accomplished, you are an inspiration to so many. Tell us, who inspires you? Who are some of your heroes?
I think for me, there's not one person. Growing up and having the family that I was fortunate enough to have, I definitely didn't get here on my own. And it's not a sports figure or a politician or, a historical person. I think it's just the everyday people in my life. I have 2 incredibly supportive parents. I have 2 very supportive sisters. I have an awesome coach. I'm surrounded by amazing friends and family, and each and every one of them in their own right inspires me. And after I was paralyzed, they all inspired me to not give up, because not a single one of them gave up on me. And after this happened, they all continued to push me to regain my life again. And that was incredibly inspiring, and having people that surround me, that believe in me that much, and that won't ever let me give up, and that haven't given up themselves, is incredible. So I would have to say it's my family and the people I'm around every day.
So you have a collection of heroes.
I have a collection of heroes.
Bryan, I spent the last 2 days reading your autobiography, which is a very powerful statement. And in it, you write about overcoming tremendous challenges and obstacles from the circumstances of your youth in Hawaii. Was there one defining moment when you realized inside yourself, I can become something extraordinary and a great force for good? Or was it more a process over time?
Oh, gosh. I guess the short answer is that it was more of a process. For those of you that haven't read my book, which if you haven't, you can go out and get it on Amazon. It's called Redemption. But I talk about it in my book. I grew up, not realizing what my impact on the world could be. And even through high school, I thought I was going to work at 7-Eleven and kind of surf in the mornings and surf in the evenings, because I grew up in Hawaii. Hopefully the CEO of 7-Eleven is not here, because there's nothing wrong with working at 7-Eleven. But that's what I thought my impact. That's all I thought my contribution to the world was going to be. And my mom, when she was pregnant with me, she would walk around the track and she would rub her stomach and she would pray for me while I was still in her stomach. And she would pray that and she wasn't a woman of faith at that time, but she would just pray that, God, please just have purpose for my child, give him a purpose in his life, use him for great things. And I don't think she had any idea what was in store for her or for myself. And I think even to this day, it's still a process to try to achieve, my full potential and everything I can do in making an impact in the world. So it's definitely a process, and I don't think that process is over by any means.
You once said that when bad things happen, you have to use them as a motivation. It reminded me, when I read about you, a little bit about what Michael J. Fox says about contracting Parkinson's disease. He calls himself a lucky man, even though he battles that disease. And I saw in an interview with you where you said that we all have disabilities, every single one of us, of various kinds, and what it means is we have to learn to live with them and work around them. Tell us how you've reframed and almost redefined disability.
You know, I think for me, when I was very first paralyzed, I didn't know anyone in my life that was disabled. I had never been around that growing up. And so when this happened, I had no idea what it meant for my life. And everyone kept saying, you know, you're disabled now. You're disabled. So here's all the things you can't do, and you're disabled. And it was almost like people were starting to kind of coddle me. And when I started grieving with this and starting to move forward with life again, I realized that the term disability is a frame of, it's a mindset. And if I continue to tell myself that I'm disabled, then I will be disabled. But if I just approach life and learn to live life and move forward with life, then I can do everything that I used to do. And, you know, almost 5 years later, I have started to do everything that I used to do. You know, I'm not going to get up and walk across the room, but there's not really anything that I can't do. And I do believe that we all have disabilities. You know, mine is very obvious. I sit in it, I wheel around, it's there, it's in your face. But sometimes the more disabling things are the things that you can't see.
Mallory, would you have imagined 6 or 7 years ago that you had in your constitution the strength that you have? Did you know it was always there?
I don't think I did. I had some other things that I had to overcome in my life growing up, as we all do, but I would have never thought that if this happened, I would have been able to pick up and move on with my life the way that I did. And, you know, I have a lot of people come up to me and say, oh, you know, I could never move forward the way that you did. And I think that all of us have that in us. And sometimes we're tested. And if we believe in ourselves enough, we do have the strength to overcome.
Bryan, early in your career, you established a foundation, for which I'm very proud of you, to give back some of what you have gained. What motivated you to create that foundation? And tell us about its mission.
Well, in 2005, I just won the silver medal in Athens in the decathlon in 2004. And in 2005, I was reflecting on my experience and my journey up until that point. And I remembered something that happened to me when I was in 6th grade, which, you know, yeah, silver medal, there you go. It's kind of blocked out by Mallory's gigantic gold medal from this year, but but it's all right. I'm not bitter or anything, but, you know. No. So in 6th grade, I was always a decent athlete, a really good athlete. And so, as you can imagine, in school, the one A that I would always get on my report card was in PE. Right? I mean, that was like the one I could always count on. And trust me, my grades weren't great up until that point. And so I always knew I could count on getting an A in PE. And my teacher, Mr. Awa, I'll never forget him. And I actually have chatted with him since, him finding out how he's changed my life. But I wasn't doing the work and the things that he was asking me to do, and I thought I would still be able to get an A as long as I just did the sports part of it, you know, as long as I was just a really good athlete. And what I found out is that's not how the world works. He failed me in PE. And tell me about it. Who gets failed in PE? It's exactly my mom's response when I came home with a report card.
Only the world's greatest athlete.
I know. So you know, he fails me in PE, and I remember I was so upset. I mean, I was just distraught because I knew I was going to go home. The rest of my grades weren't good, and this one, event that I should have always gotten an A, and I find a way to screw that up too. And I was just so embarrassed and angry, and I didn't want to go home and tell my parents. And I remember my teacher, Mr. Awa, could tell what was going on, and he said, "Bryan, what's going on?" He said, "Meet me after school." So I came in after school, and he sat me down. And he said, "Talk to me. What's the problem?" And I'm like, "Oh, you don't understand. You failed me in PE. I'm going to go home. I'm going to get grounded. My mom's going to smack me around." Like, I was coming up with all these crazy things to try to make him feel really bad for me and switch the grade to an A. And that didn't work. And he sat there and he said, "Look, are you going to get grounded? Probably. Is this going to be a tough period in your life? Probably." But he said, "I need you to understand that sports, that athletics, is not everything in life. And that was such a powerful, powerful message and lesson that he was teaching me. And to this day, I've never forgot it. And so when I thought back on that, I thought, those are the types of lessons that kids need to learn more about. There's not enough teachers, there's not enough people that have the ability to go out and pour themselves out into a child's life and really help them stay on the right track and teach them some of these life lessons. And so when I remembered that, I was like, what better way for me to have an impact on the world than to be able to find ways and opportunities to do exactly that, to pour myself out into kids' lives and maybe just shed a little bit of wisdom on some of the struggles and the hard times and the things that they might be going through at the time, in the hopes that they'll remember that later in life and be successful and have true success in life.
We've talked so much today in this conference, and we will tomorrow, about the importance of education, and we just heard about that amazing $5 million Google grant to Donors Choose, and here a 6th grade teacher had such a profound impact on your future life.
Yeah, I mean, $5 million is great. I mean, Google, if the foundation, Bryan Clay Foundation, will gladly accept, but in all seriousness, it's time. It's just time. I mean, the money is great, and we would never turn it down. But the things that have made the biggest difference in my life is when someone has stopped, and we're all busy. We all have schedules. I mean, I know exactly what it's like to be flying around the country, to be booked. I've got 3 kids of my own, a wife, and I'm trying to do this Olympic thing, right? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. But when people can stop for just, even if it's 5 minutes, and just sit down with a kid and talk to them, and share a little bit of their experience and just let them know that they're important enough to spend 5 minutes with, it makes all the difference in the world. It makes more of a difference, that 5 minutes, than $5 million will ever do. I'm telling you, because without that 5 minutes from my teacher, I would not be where I am today. There's no doubt in my mind I would not be here today.
That's a very important point. Mallory, you once said, there are times we change our lives, and there are times life changes us. That's a great quote. I'm going to use that quote. What's the one thing that you would tell this audience not to take for granted in life?
I don't know if I can pick one thing.
You can have more than one.
Right. So, obviously, my story in 2008 when I was paralyzed, my life changed in literally the blink of an eye. I was laying on a procedure table 1 minute, and I was laying on my stomach, and I was bending my legs up and down, and the doctor put the needle in my back, and my legs hit like a ton of bricks, and it all changed. I was 18, I was going on 19, and everything I knew was different. I had to relearn how to feed myself, how to dress myself, how to get in and out of bed, how to wash my face, just the small things. And I think when that happened, I realized that it's the little things. It's all the little things in life that we pass by and we just don't think twice about, that 1 minute can just vanish. And, I have gotten back to being able to do everything that I once did. But, there's the small things where I grew up going to the beach, and I loved that feeling of the sand between my toes. I put my hands in the sand now, and I can feel the sand, but I don't feel the sand between my toes. And it's so small, but it's those little things that I think we just pass by and we forget. And those are the things I think you should never take for granted.
This question is for both of you. I'll let you take it first, ladies first. Fear can be a great motivator, or it can overcome us and leave us paralyzed with doubt and anxiety. How has each of you learned to deal with fear in your lives in such a way that you both overcame tremendous odds to become world champions?
You sure you don't want to go first, Bryan? About 9 months after this happened, I went to a disability committee meeting at USA Swimming. And they had a speaker who had been, I think he'd been paralyzed for about 8 years. He was paralyzed in his early 20s. And he was talking all about the statistics of individuals that were paralyzed later in life. And I sat there, I'd been paralyzed 9 months, paralyzed later in life. And he said that statistically, you'll never graduate college. You'll never hold a steady full-time job. You'll never get married. You'll never have a family of your own. Your life expectancy will be about 50. And the likelihood of you committing suicide is like quadruple the normal person. And keep in mind, I was 19. I had just been paralyzed, and I sat there, and he struck the fear in me. I was terrified. I went home, and I think I kind of went back to being a little bit down in the dumps because I heard all these things someone wanted to tell me that I'd never do, and this lifestyle that I would have, and how, that one moment changed, and now this is what my life was going to be. And I didn't want that for my life. And I think for me, that fear motivated me. It motivated me to make that change and not become a statistic. And it motivated me to get up and, I had to get up every day and face a wheelchair, but move forward and not be that statistic, not be one of the individuals that's disabled that, has all these horrible things that's going to happen. Because I think it's really up to us to choose our own destiny in a way. We all have those things, and it's how we react to them. It's not the moments that define us. It's how we react to those moments that defines us.
Fear. Oh, geez. Fear. Look, I think it's great to have a little bit of fear, but I think the key about fear is controlling it, or having control of it, and not allowing it to control you. For example, my kids, when I want them to do something that they just aren't doing, I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. If I have to kind of make them a little afraid, it works out kind of good sometimes. So a little bit of fear is good. For an athlete, a little bit of fear, that anxiety or that fear, it's good. It's letting your body know, that, hey, we're getting ready to do something here, and we got to turn up the volume a little bit. So a little bit of fear is good. But what I see fear as is a lot of times when it overtakes you, I see it as a lack of two things. And that's a lack of preparation and a lack of having, I guess you could say, a good perspective. And if you can prepare and have perspective, a healthy perspective on things, I think it'll minimize your fear. And in turn, you'll be able to control that fear rather than it controlling you. A quick story about preparation. In 2008, and Mallory can attest to this as well, when you go to the Olympic Games, for me it was in 2008, for Mallory it was this year in 2012, you prepare for 4 years. 4 years, 6 to 7 hours every day, 5 days a week, where everything you do is preparing for that one moment. So when you get there, you want to make sure, at least I knew, and I know Mallory knew this as well, but I knew when I stepped on that track, when I got to the Olympic Village, that I had done everything that I possibly could to make sure that I was going to win that gold medal. That preparation gave me a little bit of confidence, and I was able to control my fear in that way. The other thing is perspective. In 2008, for me, going in as the early favorite, I cannot tell you the amount of pressure that you feel. I felt like my parents were counting on me, my family, the state of Hawaii where I was from was counting on me, Glendora, California, where I live now, was counting on me, my alma mater, Azusa Pacific University, which is a small school in LA, was counting on me, the US was counting on me, everything hinged on whether or not I was going to win this gold medal. I remember sitting down with my wife and telling her, hey, look, if I don't win this gold medal, you might have to go out and get a job. I might have to go out and get a real job, we may lose the house, we may lose our cars, life may look completely different the next day, and that fear was crippling at times. But what I found out was, and the way that I found out was that my perspective was off. My wife, in all of her wisdom, when I was leaving to go to the 2008 Olympics, before I left, had created a book, and this book was called, she titled it Encouragement, and she had the EN and then the word courage in capital letters, and then meant, of course, in lowercase letters. And what she did was she wrote to all of our friends and our family, and she had them send her letters of encouragement for me. And she created this book, and she snuck it into my backpack, and when I got on the plane, I was going through my backpack looking for my earphones because I was going to watch a movie, and I found this book, and I started flipping through it. And as I started flipping through it, I came across these letters from my family and friends, and it was the most moving thing I've ever experienced. And I came across this one letter, and it was from my son, who was 4 at the time. And his name is Jacob, and it had this scribbling all over the page, and it was just different colors randomly placed on a page. But at the bottom, he wanted to tell me something, and so my wife typed it out for him, and it was a verse that we had taught him to help him when he was afraid of the dark and afraid in his room. And the gist of the verse was that basically, God is my helper, and I will not be afraid. And he remembered enough to tell me, because he knew that I was scared, and he knew that my fear was there. He remembered enough to remind me of that, and that just put everything in perspective right away. I mean, instantly, I realized what was important in life, and I realized that, look, no matter what happens, I'm going to come home to a family that loves me, to kids that love me, to friends that love me, and that's really what life is all about.
I don't want this to end, but here's what we're going to do. We now have the video queued up. You're going to see the video, and then 1 or 2 of you will have time to ask Mallory or Bryan a question, and then after that, we'll auction off the gold medals.
Mallory Weggemann goes in lane 2 for the USA, 32.01 to qualify.
There's no clear-cut path in life. It is a constant winding road. But somewhere, in all the turns, we find our own way of straightening it out. And I remember going into the race, and I listened to a rap song called All I Do Is Win. And it was blasting through my headphones.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
We went in, it was going to be my 3rd and final epidural injection to help treat back pain I had been experiencing. And things went smoothly at first. I had my first injection, and it didn't quite go as planned. I didn't go numb, which for epidurals, that's kind of the whole point of it. It's supposed to numb you. So they started kind of raising an eyebrow. They were a little confused why it didn't numb me. So they brought me back in the room a couple hours later and tried again. They manipulated with the catheter and then ended up doing a whole new injection. And it was then that my legs dropped and hit the table and things went numb. For me, my way of finding hope again and believing again was by getting into the water and swimming. And I think we all have those things in our life that give us that guidance we need. And for me, mine's the pool, and it's my passion, it's my love. It inspires me both in and out of the water to do things that I do in my everyday life. I am not the same person I was when I was sober before I was paralyzed. Despite the fact that I can't use my legs, I wanted to see, okay, where can I take this and how far can I push my body? I was 6th at the 25-meter mark. And somewhere in those last 20 meters, I saw my competition I think I turned my head at 20 meters to take a breath. I saw her and I was like, And I put my head down. I didn't breathe for 20 meters. I just went and I touched them out by 0.2 of a second. So it was a pretty.
Chased down that mountain, the record he just missed this morning. But coming up extremely well, Bernie Canard in lane 6 in the Russian Federation. Bernie Canard's really being challenged down by Yang going very well. Yang Xingyang from China in lane 3. Elliot can't hold up the speed of Yang in 3. Bloody Canard 6, Bloody Canard's in the lead behind me just. Here comes Elliot, here's the lead to late. Young's charging, but in late two, Weggemann. Bunny Weggemann.
Everyone else in my life at that point in time was grieving as well, and he didn't know any different. And over these past 4 years, we've gotten we've developed a very, very close relationship, but he has never once told me I can't. And even when I've had the craziest of goals and dreams and aspirations, he's right there behind me, and most of the time he's there behind me with an even crazier idea. So, he's never looked at me and told me I can't do something, and that to me has allowed me to continue to push myself.
Perfect finish there for Weggemann. Beautiful range and reach of stroke. No tension in the closing stages.
Okay, so in the Paralympics there's classification. Do you guys know that much of it? There's the, see, you're from the UK, you know these things. In the States people are like, wait, Paralympics, can we start there? One is the most disabled. I've never even seen a 1. 10 is the most able. So 3 days before I was supposed to compete for my first race as a 7, I got moved up to an 8. I was now racing single arm partial amputees, and I have nothing from my belly button down. 3 weeks before London, I found out that the IDC had protested my classification, meaning that I had to come into London and days before competition get reclassified. Classification process is an hour or so bench test. We tried to appeal it, and an hour and a half before I walked in opening ceremonies, I found out that it was denied, and I would not be racing the next morning as a 7.
Yeah, so the title of the world's greatest athlete, I guess I won that by winning the gold medal at the 2008 Olympics. It's a little weird. I joke with my wife every once in a while, and I'll remind her who she's married to, just remember, who you're married to here. My name is Bryan Clay. I grew up in Hawaii, and my sport is the decathlon and track and field. I married in 2004, actually the same year that I won the silver medal at the Athens Olympics. And I've got 3 kids. All of them they're the joys of my life. They make every day worthwhile. My mom's Japanese, and so I grew up very, very much Japanese. My dad's African American. My parents got divorced when I was in 6th grade, and that posed a lot of problems. I got into a lot of trouble and acted out and got involved in counseling. My counselor told my mom, that she needed to get me involved in sports to kind of save me. And so my mom gave me the option of running track and field or swimming. I always tell people I didn't want to wear a Speedo, so I chose track and field, and that's kind of how things got started for me. I can't tell you how many times I quit the track team in high school because, I didn't want to be a leader. I can still hear it to this day, my mom telling me, Bryan, you don't get to choose whether or not you're a leader. You either are or you aren't, and you're a leader, so there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You might as well just accept it. And I used to hate hearing that. But those are the types of lessons that my mom, my dad, my stepdad were teaching me. People always ask me, well, what's your secret weapon? Besides my faith, it's my family. They help me remember what's really important in life. They help me remember that track and field isn't who I am. It's just what I do. Knowing that I get to come home after being at the track every day, whether it was a good or bad day, and I've got people that love me unconditionally, that takes a lot of the pressure off. And it really allows you to enjoy what you do, enjoy your career. I'm not any different than any other dad or husband out there. Same responsibilities. Got to go to work every day. Got to put in the time, and I have to manage my time with my family. But it's kind of fun. I'm not gonna toss it off to the side.
Because of the lateness. Because of the lateness of the hour. We're not going to be able to take questions, but I'm going to briefly reenact the ceremony at the podium. And hopefully I'll get these right.
That one's mine.
That was yours?
No, I'm just
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
The only thing we're missing is the national anthem. I want to thank Mallory and Bryan for being such incredible inspirations for all of us and for doing our country so much honor.
Thanks for having us.